Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. Today we're heading to Scotland. We're going to be looking at this newsletter, Love Scotland, the ultimate Scotland travel guide you can't miss. Sounds pretty bold, right? Claiming to have everything you need for a stress-free trip. Yeah, just skimming through it does seem to be jam-packed with all sorts of tips and inspiration for a Scotland trip.
It really does cover a lot. Everything from the super practical stuff you need to know before you go, like travel documents and what currency they use, to the fun stuff like what's going on culturally and what to eat when you're there.
Oh, and it talks about the 8 cities of Scotland. 8? I had no idea. And there's this section called Around the Web with all these intriguing headlines, like a Harry Potter concert at Edinburgh Castle and a Bay City Rollers musical. What do you think so far? Is this newsletter living up to that ultimate claim?
Yeah, I think so. At least from what we've seen so far, it's definitely looking like it could help plan an awesome trip. Like it's showcasing just how much variety there is in Scotland. You could go from seeing historical castles to experiencing modern pop culture.
Okay, so that's a good start.
And speaking of those 8 cities, the newsletter really emphasizes how each one is a unique blend of history and modern life.
So what does that actually look like? What kind of history are we talking about?
Yeah.
And what's modern life in these cities? Is it all kilts and bagpipes? Or more like trendy cafes and nightlife? I need some specifics.
Right, let's get into the details. Let's take Edinburgh as an example, since the newsletter mentions that quite a bit. They talk about how it's known for its medieval old town, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can walk those cobblestone streets and imagine yourself back in time. But then just a short distance away, you have the new town, which is all Georgian elegance with squares and gardens. That contrast is what makes these cities so fascinating. It's like they've layered centuries of history right on top of each other.
So you could wander through medieval clothes and then pop into a hip cafe for a flat white. Now that's an experience. And speaking of experiences that Around the Web section is really calling my name, what stood out to you in there?
Well, that Harry Potter film concert series at Edinburgh Castle definitely got my attention. Just imagine hearing the Royal Scottish National Orchestra playing those iconic scores live with the castle all lit up behind them. Now, that's something I'd add to my bucket list.
Oh, for sure. That sounds incredible. But hey, if you're not a Wizarding World fan, don't worry. There's also a new musical celebrating the Bay City Rollers.
Oh, yeah, the Scottish pop band.
Yeah, they were big in the 70s. Seems like there's a little something for everyone, even with very different musical tastes.
Absolutely. And the newsletter also points out Aberdeen's Christmas Village, calling it a must-visit festive wonderland.
Oh, fun.
But in the middle of all this excitement, they do slip in some practical advice. Book your experiences in advance. It sounds like 2024 is going to be a super popular year for Scotland tourism.
So if you're thinking about a trip, don't wait. Procrastination is not your friend when it comes to booking must-do experiences. I'm taking notes. What else caught your eye in this guide?
Well, they mentioned top experiences in Scotland likely to sell out, which
Right.
really piqued my interest. But then they don't list them. Talk about a tease.
Oh, come on, newsletter. Don't leave us hanging. What could these mysterious experiences be?
Okay, so they do give us some clues. They recommend Aviemore, which is known for its outdoor activities and as a gateway to Cairngorms National Park. So maybe those top experiences are hidden somewhere in that area.
Ooh, maybe a wildcat safari. Now that's an experience I could get behind. Okay, so we've got cities, we've got events, we've got potential wildcat encounters. What else is this newsletter throwing our way?
Well, they do mention the old Packhorse Bridge, like it's something you should see, but there are no other details about it. It's
Yeah.
like they're dropping these little hints about hidden gems, but not giving us the whole map.
Ugh, I know, right? It's kind of frustrating. But okay, maybe that's part of the fun, the sense of discovery. Okay, let's move on to something else. This newsletter has a section called Scottish Food You Will Love. Now, I'm all for trying new things and going on culinary adventures, but I have to admit, I'm a little hesitant when I see the word love next to Scottish food. What are they raving about?
Get ready for this. They go deep into the world of black pudding. They even give instructions on how to make this Scottish blood sausage at home.
Wait, blood sausage? I don't know about love. Maybe admire or respect for the people who enjoy it. I'm all for trying new things, but that might be a step too far for me.
Hey, to each their own right. It's all part of experiencing a new culture. You never know. You might surprise yourself and end up loving it.
Yeah, maybe someday. But for now, I'll just admire it from afar.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get too lost in the world of blood sausage, there's one more section I want to touch on, the Cooey section. It focuses on a 3-day solo trip to Edinburgh. I'm really intrigued by this because I've been thinking about a solo trip myself. What are your thoughts on solo travel?
I think it's an awesome way to travel. You can really explore at your own pace and immerse yourself in a place. And Edinburgh would be a great choice for a solo trip. It's a very walkable city with friendly people and a great atmosphere. Plus, there's just so much to see and do, from all the historical sites to museums to pubs.
It does sound perfect. And based on what we've seen in this newsletter, Edinburgh really does seem like the heart of Scotland. This Cooey section almost makes it sound like you could have a great trip without even leaving the city. What do you think?
I think it's definitely possible to have an amazing time in Edinburgh without ever leaving, but I also wouldn't underestimate the allure of the Scottish countryside. The newsletter does mention places like Aviemore and Cairngorms National Park, but just barely. So
Yeah.
I think there's a whole other world to explore outside the city limits.
You're so right. It's like we've only scratched the surface of what Scotland has to offer. This newsletter is more like a teaser trailer than a full-length film. But it's definitely made me want to learn more. What do you think are the biggest takeaways so far? For someone who's seriously thinking about a Scotland trip. Well, I think one thing's for sure, this newsletter makes it clear 2024 is going to be a big year for Scotland tourism. So if you're thinking about going in now, you need to book those flights and accommodations like now, especially if you're interested in those really popular events they talked about, like the Harry Potter concert at the castle.
Okay, so planning ahead is key. But where do you even start with all this? This newsletter throws so much information at you, it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what we're here for, to help you make sense of it all. I think one of the biggest takeaways is that Scotland has something for everyone. You've got these amazing cities, the rugged highlands, the historical castles, and all those quirky events. It really comes down to deciding what kind of trip you want. Yeah, it's like a choose-your-own-adventure for Scotland.
Ugh.
But let's be real, you probably can't do it all in one trip. So if you had to narrow it down, what would you recommend for a first-time visitor?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I'd say start with Edinburgh. It's such a cool city with a really unique blend of history, culture, and modern life. You could easily spend a few days there exploring the castle, wandering around the Royal Mile, and just taking it all in.
And what about if you're more into the outdoors? Would you suggest going beyond the city?
Absolutely. Aviemore and the Cairngorms National Park, which the newsletter mentioned, would be perfect for nature lovers. Imagine hiking through those landscapes, maybe even spotting some wildlife. And who knows, maybe you'll stumble upon one of those mysterious top experiences they were talking about.
Okay, so we've got Edinburgh for city life and the Cairngorms for adventure. But what about the other 6 cities the newsletter mentioned? Any hidden gems there we should keep in mind?
Well, Glasgow is known for its awesome art and music scene. Inverness is a great starting point for exploring the Highlands and Loch Ness. And Aberdeen, of course, has that Christmas village, if you're into that kind of thing. Each city has its own personality and charm. You really just need to do a little research and figure out which ones sound interesting to you.
Right, and that's where travel blogs, guidebooks, and all those other resources come in handy. But man, it's kind of frustrating that the newsletter didn't elaborate on those top experiences. It's like they teased us and then left us hanging. Any final guesses on what those might be?
Well, based on what they did highlight, I'd say they probably involve either unique cultural events, outdoor adventures, or historical landmarks. Maybe a special whiskey tasting a guided tour of a remote island or a chance to see the northern lights. The possibilities are endless.
So much intrigue. I guess that's part of what makes Scotland so special. The sense of discovery, the unexpected encounters. It's a country that seems to invite you to explore and go off the beaten path.
Exactly. And I think that's the perfect way to wrap things up. Scotland is calling, and this newsletter gave us a glimpse of the magic that's waiting there. So listeners, do your research plan ahead, and most importantly, embrace the adventure. Who knows, maybe you'll even find yourself falling in love with black pudding.
Or maybe not. But hey, that's part of the fun, isn't it? Stepping outside our comfort zones, trying new things, embracing the unexpected. And based on what we've learned today, Scotland seems like the perfect place to do just that. So until next time, happy travels, everyone.